The Fox 5 drone showing us the Never Give Up Youth Healing Center in Nye County, where an employee is being hit with allegations of child abuse and neglect. Those charges brought against a nurse at the facility.
And Fox 5's Mike Allen tells us more details about the case. Mike.
Yeah, licensed practical nurse Christina Mendoza has been charged with abusing 19 victims in her care, all children. That's according to a Nye County Sheriff's Office report.
Christina Mendoza is facing a total of 60 counts after her arrest last week, including criminal neglect of patients and child abuse during her time as a nurse at Never Give Up Youth Healing Center. The Nye County Sheriff's Office compiled a report detailing an investigation that started a couple years ago, which uncovered poor conditions in the mental health facility, including Mendoza failing to provide medical services, care, or supervision to her patients. This report details injuries her patients received, like bruising to their faces, cheeks, necks, large bumps on their foreheads, and what appeared to be carpet burns on their cheeks and jaws. The investigator found those injuries came from those kids being restrained by staff. The report says one restraint by a staff member left a female patient with a fractured toe, which was not evaluated by medical staff until a month after the injury. The investigation found once that patient turned 18, she was secluded in a room because the facility didn't have an exit plan for her. Never Give Up is not licensed to house adults at its facility, but the report says all NGU staff knew that she was being kept there, and on top of that, she was not given access to communicate with anyone outside the facility or even leave the room she was in. This lasted for about 2 months after she turned 18, the report says. Another patient in Mendoza's care had stopped eating and had issues with severe constipation, so a therapist determined he needed to follow a specific diet. According to the report, Mendoza actually never arranged for the child to be seen by a doctor and only gave him one of the specialized medical shakes that were crafted for him, plus told staff not to give the child any outside food. The child's mother pulled him out of NGU after he went from weighing 105 pounds at check-in to 64 pounds at check-out. A doctor who saw him directly afterwards said his organs were within a day or two of completely shutting down. Also in the report, staff at the facility reported Mendoza has been administering chemical restraints on the children without notifying their parents, even after other staff determined the children did not need an injection at the time. Nevada state law says chemical restraints can only be used in emergency situations.
As a mandatory reporter, Mendoza is accused of failing to report any of the abuse and neglect you just heard about. And the investigation concluded that she willfully caused a child to, quote, suffer unjustifiable physical pain or mental suffering. In studio, Mike Allen, Fox 5 News, local Las Vegas.
And it turns out the Never Give Up facility has been the center of controversy before. Most recently, a state inspection found health, safety, and welfare issues at the center. All those infractions led to $8,000 in fines by the state. 2 years ago, there was a riot at the facility that left 2 teenagers missing for a day. And in 2019, the Nye County Sheriff's Office investigated allegations of physical and sexual abuse at that facility.